Hello and welcome to another CQPweb tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to take a tour of the main concordance screen. Now many of my previous tutorials which have looked at different ways of doing searches have actually shown you the concordance screen already, but in this tutorial I'm going to take a bit of time to look at the different features of this screen and what you can do here and what information you can see. So I'm going to start by just doing a query. I'll do a lemma query for the word break, which is a query we've seen before. And let it hum away. And here we are. So I'm going to spend the rest of this video basically talking through all the bits of things that you can see on this screen. And we will start in the main middle bit, which is the concordance itself. The concordance itself is shown in a table layout, as you can see, and by default the display is to have examples, each example of the term searched for centered in this central column here. This is what is called KWIC display, or keyword in context display, where the word is centered, as you can see, and then the context before and the context after arranged like this. Now note that how much context before and after you see for each concordance line is something that is configured for each corpus separately, so you will see either fewer or more words before and after depending on how your corpus has been set up. This KWIC or quick view is not the only way to view the concordance. If we click there on this button that says line view, we switch to the other view, which is called line view. The only difference is that we don't bother with centering things around the match to the search term. Previously we had a column of examples of the word break. Now the word that we've searched for plus the context before and after are just presented as a single extract of a paragraph, and so you don't get the lining up of the examples. And quick view and line view are both useful but for different things. For the minute, let's switch back to quick view using the same button again. It switches us back, and once we've done that we'll take a look at some of the other features of this screen. The next thing to note is that alongside each example there is an identification number, which doesn't really mean anything in relation to the corpus. It's really for your use when you're working on a concordance. As you analyze it, it might be helpful to have the numbers in order to refer to particular concordance lines. You also have the file name. Most corpora consist of several texts, or indeed sometimes many thousands of texts. There are corpora that consist of just one big text, but most do not. And in CQPweb, every text or every file is identified by a short label, and that's what you see here, the short labels for the texts from which these examples have come. Now you'll see that the file name of each one is a link, and that's for two reasons. And the first reason is that if you hover the mouse over the file name, then you'll get a little box popping up, as you can see there, which contains some information on that text. So in this case we can see that it's got the word length of the text, which is always there, and then there are some descriptions of the text. Now usually these descriptions will make more sense if you know something about the design of the corpus, and in this case I'm working with the American English 2006 corpus, and in that corpus you have important distinctions between texts in terms of what broad genre they're in. In this case it's a press text, what sample type it is, the That means what kind of sample was taken from the original text, and in this case a multiple sample was taken. And the text category, which is a scheme of classifying text used in this particular corpus. Again, my job here is not to explain how this corpus works, but rather to explain how CQPweb works. And the point is that if you really want to make use of this information about text, you will have to know a bit about the corpus. But CQPweb makes that information available to you, and you can have it pop up for whatever texts are listed here, and it saves you looking it up in some other source. Worth mentioning that if you click on one of these links, it takes you to the text metadata page, which gives you all of the information that you saw in that little pop-up blue box hovering above the link, and also it will possibly give you some other information too. So in this case we've got the same things we saw before: text category, broad genre, and so on, but we also get extra information such as the titles of the different articles, because this is press of course, the different articles from which this text was sampled, and their publication dates, and so on and so forth. Authors, other information like that. I'll go back to the concordance. There are likewise links on each of the actual result words themselves. If you hover on those, what you see is a version of the concordance line with part of speech tags present. So you can see that in that little box, every word has got an underscore after it and then a part of speech tag. Or, to be more specific, the primary annotation, whatever that may be, and it usually is a part of speech tag. This is very useful because the primary annotation is usually one of the things that is most useful in the corpus to know about. So that will pop up if you hover there. The tag set, by the way, is obviously it's exactly the same as you would use in searching the primary annotation. You can find help files for that linked out via the links on the corpus's front page menu, which I showed in a previous tutorial video. Each of these links, if you click on them, takes you to the context screen, which I shan't talk about more now. I'll do a separate video on that. But basically the context screen shows you a bit more context around each example. So if I go down to the bottom, you will see down at the bottom that you have the controls from the top, such as the line view control and some others that I'll show in a minute. But you also have a link called Corpus and Tag Set Help. And if you click the Corpus and Tag Set Help link, it brings up a menu, the same links to external documentation that are available from the front page of the standard query screen, and that you've seen already. So that explains what's going on in the main table. Let's take a look at some more of these controls. Let me go back up to the top again. An important one is the randomize button. As you'll have noticed, the results that you get in a concordance are by default sorted in the order they occur in the corpus. So in this case, the corpus texts are sorted according to their little labels, and you'll see that they all come from section A of the corpus, which in this corpus is news texts. Well, perhaps it would be useful if the first 50 were not all from the start of the corpus. You can see that there are actually 232 matches, but what we're seeing at a glimpse are all the ones from the start of the corpus. Well, perhaps it would be useful to see at a glance a more representative sample from throughout the corpus. If we press the Show in Random Order button, then that's what we get. We see the results in a randomized order that does not favor the start of the corpus. And this is very useful in particular when you're going to be taking a subset of the results that you got. This is often done. We don't always analyze every single example, but if you're going to analyze a subset, the subset should not be biased towards the start of the corpus, and so for that reason it's useful to randomize. And if you look here, you can see that the texts from which these come, there's no longer any particular pattern to it because it's all been randomized. And as with the line view button, the same button can now take us back to corpus order. I shan't click that, I'll stick with the random order for now. What other controls have we got? There are two main ones. There are two main groups of controls, rather. At this side, we have the drop-down that contains the corpus analysis options. It also has the new query option, which is the one that you can use to go back to the start screen, and which is the way to start again with a new analysis. But it does contain, more interestingly, a series of analysis options. Each one of these, and I'm not going to go through them individually, but each one of these takes you to a new screen where you can do something interesting or useful with this query result. Often it involves taking out some examples from the query and giving you a new query that has been reduced in some way. I'm not going to talk about those now, except to know that this is how you get to them. This is where they are. And I will do separate tutorials on those things. The second thing we have over here is the query navigation controls, and these are fairly standard. If you have a query with more hits than will fit on one page, then you can go forward to the next page, backwards to a previous page, which there will be no link here if you're on the first page already, or to the first page. So first, previous, next, final. You can also type in a page number here and go straight to that page. So we can see here that we're on a 5-page query. So let's say I want to jump to page 4. I can do show page and it should take me there. Yes, here we are. And now I can press this one to go to the first page again. And I can scroll through like this, just going through one page at a time. I'm on page 2 now. Now I'm on page 3. Or I can skip straight to the end. So that's query navigation. The only other thing to note is the title box up here, which contains a lot of very useful information in quite a condensed form. So the first thing it does is it gives you a reminder of what you typed in. This is useful if you make a typo and something goes wrong. You can always look back up here to see what you actually typed in. Then it will tell you the number of results, very useful, and how many different texts in the corpus they occurred in. And this is often interesting because there is a difference between something that occurs a lot of times in 1 or 2 texts versus something that occurs a lot of times in many different texts. The break is obviously one of the latter sort. It's a very basic word in the English vocabulary, so it occurs in lots and lots of different texts. Then it tells you how much that's out of. So this corpus is 1.175 million words, so that's 232 out of this number. Likewise, it tells you how many texts there are, so it occurs in 162 out of 500 texts. And then it calculates the per million words frequency, which is simply this divided by this times 1 million. And this is, if you've ever read about relative frequencies or normalized frequencies as they're sometimes called, that calculation should be familiar to you. And in corpus linguistics we often use per million words citations to explain frequencies, and so that's there for you. It will also explain here anything that has been done to the query since you generated it. So when I first created this query, that was where it ended. But because I've pressed the randomize button, it says ordered randomly, right? Anything that you do that actually changes the query will be described here. So it will say, comma, you did this, comma, you did this, comma, you did this. As I say, we'll look at some of the other things that you can actually do later on. This is very useful if you're doing lots of these kinds of things to your query, then that helps you keep track of it. Finally, in smaller letters here, there is a report of how long the query took to run. And you can see it says 0.169 seconds. That's how long it took to retrieve these results. Now, retrieved from cache means simply that the query had already been done and just had to be reloaded. And you'll get that any time after the very first time that you load a query. So if you click next page, the query isn't actually done again, instead it's retrieved from cache, and so it'll say retrieved from cache here. And that is, I believe, all the features of the concordance screen. I know I haven't explained all the places that this screen can take you to, particularly this analysis menu here, but we'll get to that in other tutorials. Thanks very much for listening.